Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a Weird Movies podcast, joined today by Giles Edwards, as I often am, for the weirdest movies of 2023, both our lists, and plus, as a bonus, Robert Hubbard's list of top 10 weird movies of 2023, and he is not on with us, sent in his list at the last minute, compiled it, and we are ready to read that off too as soon as we are done. A word before we start, our weird movie calendar runs from November to November. So that means movies released in December of this year couldn't expect everybody to see in time. And so two movies of great interest will not be on our list. And those movies are Miyazaki's The Boy and the Heron and Georgios Lanthimos's Poor Things. Those are not eligible for our 2023 list, but having seen both of them in the past week, I highly suspect, I can almost assure you, you will be seeing them on next year's list.
So tune in next year to see if Greg is correct.
So before we get started with Giles and I's lists of official top 10s, we're going to go through some honorable mentions. And I want to get Rob Hubbard's honorable mentions out of the way first, so I'm just pulling that up right now. His the four movies he mentioned that did not make the top 10 were Dream Scenario, the Nick Cage movie, Something in the Dirt, the Moorhead and Benson conspiracy low budget movie, Once Upon a Time in Uganda, the documentary about the guy who made Who Killed Captain Alex and Bad Black, the director from Uganda, Wakaliwood, whose name escapes me at the moment. And his other honorable mention was one he probably couldn't have legitimately put in his top 10 because I believe he worked on it briefly, and that was Kick Me, the movie in Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri. So those were Rob Hubbard's honorable mentions. Giles Edwards is now going to bring up his honorable mentions, and then I'll throw in my honorable mentions.
Excellent. Well, hello. I also second Something in the Dirt as an honorable mention. That definitely played around the periphery, as one might expect. There is a very high floor of quality you get from Benson and Moorhead, and they do it rather inexpensively, making it all the more impressive. So definitely a very good film. Not as weird as some films as we've seen, but definitely a very good one and an odd one to be sure. Leaning more toward odd is the film Todd Tarantula, which I had the pleasure of reviewing as part of my ongoing quest to rack up as many smaller new filmmaker, low budgety things to see who is worth keeping an eye on. That was directed by Ansel Faraj, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was also written and most behind the camera stuff for it. Very interesting, distorted visual thing, like a hyper bad 90s digital camera kind of look with lots of oversaturation and dreamy colors in a as I see here, an LA landscape. So that was quite enjoyable and worth remembering. Sympathy for the Devil is sort of requisite. It is by far and away not the strangest Nicolas Cage movie I've seen, but it is perhaps got the cagiest performance I've seen since Vampire's Kiss, at least. And so, as I've mentioned a number of times, since it's had a slow trickle of release since we've been doing this podcast, if you look forward to the idea of 90 minutes hanging out as a trapped passenger and later on diner companion with a fairly unwell Nicolas Cage, this is the movie for you. It's pretty much a two-man bit, and much of it's in a car. Um, the other day I saw Give Me Pity, which was nicely odd. The most recent sort of late night special-esque kind of weird thing I'd seen was actually Late Night with the Devil, which I suspect will get a release next year, and so you'll probably hear more about that from us. But yeah, Give Me Pity was a wonderful saturation of pink and despair with I think at most there are half a dozen people you ever see on the camera with a sort of crowd on scene reacting to the accelerating collapse of the young star. Was it Jesse St. Clair?
That sounds right. Sinclair.
Something. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if
Yes.
Greg had more remarks on that later. Um, and my last honorable mention is Freaks versus the Reich, which I saw on a big screen at Fantasia under, I believe, just the name Freaks. And I guess they wanted to clarify that, oh yeah, there are Nazis for the official release title. And that was not terribly strange, but a whole lot of fun and a neat, a more interesting take on the mutant genre, as well as a wonderful performance by the antagonist bad guy Nazi that is one of the only people I've seen sort of evoke sympathy for a member of that nasty group of people. So those are my 5 honorable mentions.
Okay. Well, let me do my honorable mentions. I believe I also have 5, but I'm not counting them right now. But let's see what I've got. I've got an honorable mention for Smoking Causes Coughing, the latest Quentin Dupieux movie, his latest absurdist comedy. It is about a team of tobacco smoking superheroes who fight kaiju type monsters in cheesy costumes, but in typical Dupieux fashion, it goes all over the place into a bunch of little surreal sketches. Next was Dream Scenario, also one of L. Rob Hubbard's honorable mentions, which is a mainstream role for Nick Cage, but it allows him, I think, to explore a nerdier shade of weird, mostly an observer throughout all the weirdness, and but he gets a few moments to go a little nuts. Next is for honorable mention for me is A New Old Play, which I think we might see again. It was made in 2021, but didn't screen in the United States until this year, and it just barely screened. So just barely got on our radar, but it is available on VOD. It's quite long, it's epic length. It's a phantasmagorical trip through Chinese history and into Chinese hell. And also making my honorable mentions is Leda, the minimalist, surrealist movie, expressionist movie based on the myth of Leda and the Swan. And we have interviewed the director, Samuel Tressler III. We may hear more about Leda later. And finally, my other honorable mention is someone else we've also interviewed on the channel, and that is the Nick Gatsby, director of Zapper, which is free on Tubi, as is Todd Tarantula. And it's another micro budget psychedelic thing. It would make a very good double feature with Todd Tarantula.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah.
It's got flying moose heads and banana guns and a budget of maybe $15. Just
And that was just the bus fare to get the crew to the location.
very weird. Just missed my top 10 cut. So that's that. And now we can actually get into our official top 10s and do what's probably going to be a kind of awkward swapping of stills between me and Giles, as I have Giles hasn't seen my top 10 list. I briefly glanced at his, but I didn't take notes on it. So I'm ready to be surprised by your number 10 pick, Giles. If you would bring up the, I'll feign surprise at least. If you
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
you're representative still of your number 10 weird movie of the year.
Right. So, well, let me try that again.
I told you.
1, 2, 3. Because yeah, this is every time that I've had to host this, my greatest fear has been dealing with this screen share thing. But tell me, do you see an image, Greg?
We got it.
All right.
We have a red duck-billed mask guy in a mesh shirt, perhaps facing off against someone.
Yeah, we get the over-the-shoulder shot of, I believe, one of the protagonists in the FP ongoing saga. This series of films, I will admit, I have only seen the latest edition, but it conceived and directed and overall made by a fellow by name of Jason Trost, whom we've had the pleasure of interviewing before. This isn't too weird per se, but it is incredibly silly and reaches a very clever degree of enjoyable stupidity in the narrative, dialogue, and the actors doing that key thing of really believing what they're saying despite what it is they're saying. So with characters like J-Tro, Chai Tea, Chai Latte, and other silly post-apocalyptic, postmodern, gritty, urban, dystopian dance revolution type goings on. It was a delight to observe the idiocy on screen for this one. So not so weird, but really a whole lot of fun.
And that was FP4EVs. Giles is number 10. And now I will do my number 10 as we do this awkward share back and forth. Did it pop up?
It did. I see what looks like through probably a peephole on a door or maybe a barrel of a gun. There is a distressed, slightly older woman in a house dress looking straight at us, holding in a defensive manner a hammer.
And that is Leonore of Leonore Will Never Die, my 10th weirdest movie of 2023. It's a Filipino movie about a grandma type who is a screenwriter for Filipino action movies past her prime, but she's working on one last screenplay that has deep personal meaning to her, and she finds herself entering the screenplay of this Filipino action movie. So you get two movies for the price of one. You get the movie about the very charming old Filipino grandma who eventually has to take a hammer to some baddies, and the actual recreation of the very cheesy and campy action movie. One critic, I think, described it as something like being John Malkovich, but weirder, which is not accurate. What they meant to say was it's like adaptation and just as weird. But definitely a movie that's worth a look, in my opinion. And that's my number 10. Giles, you ready for your number 9?
Oh, I hope so. Sharing the screen again, going to this, hitting the share button, and you should see a smiling, happy face. This I saw recently in a not entirely vain attempt to catch up with Greg, who has seen all the movies of 2023. I have seen maybe a little over half, but I caught up with this one. And yes, actually, I have no idea how old he is. Brandon Cronenberg's latest movie, Infinity Pool, which I think slipped into theaters, then slipped onto disc sometime early this past year. and I finally got around to watching it. And as one might expect from Cronenberg Senior's boy, there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and a lot of that weird stuff has to do with some body trouble and mental trouble in association with body and psychological deterioration, all taking place in I'm gonna guess a fictional Balkan resort town. Um, and so that kind of hit all the right tones. I quite liked the various nods to his father's work that he put in, especially the line vis-a-vis why this tiny little country has this duplicating technology is they have a poetry to their interpretation of the process, which is almost lifted entirely from older Cronenberg's The Fly, when Dr. Brundle is trying to figure out why his method isn't working and stumbles upon the sort of same kind of realization. So yeah, Infinity Pool, I heard a lot of remarks about it being, you know, distressing or this, that, or the other. And I thought, no, it's just really Cronenberg. And, you know, you should know whether or not you want that before going in anyway. So yeah, good movie, weird, fun time. Um,
There you go.
and enough surprises that I, you know, didn't ever guess what was going to happen next.
Okay. All right. So that was Giles's number 9, Infinity Pool. So my number 9 is missing. Okay. Stop. Let me fix that. Sorry. How do I fix this there? I think that's what. No, that's not it. Well, wouldn't be Pod 366 if I mess this up. Where is the setting I want?
Oh,
No. Here?
well, I guess while you're looking, I have one more remark that
Go
I
ahead with
had
your
for
remark.
Infinity Pool. Infinity Pool is R-rated and is well deserving of the label in a number of ways. And I find myself increasingly reassured by these movies that are actually R-rated, because I remember back in the day that kind of stopped somewhere during the mid-90s that there would be lots of violence and or nudity and or sex conceivably in your even standard release in cinemas for R-rated movies, and that seems to have become less so over the years. So some real great 80s style R action for those who enjoy that sort of thing in their motion pictures.
I think in the R-rated version that was in theaters, they cut a little bit out and then it was available, but it wasn't very much that was cut out. And there was available.
I can guess which scene it might, or which scene or two it might have been from, and I can guess that that also really wouldn't affect the flow of the experience much.
Wasn't really all that necessary. So here's my number 9, a movie that Giles did not see, probably. A movie that gets in based on sheer oddity. It's Mises Blue. Giles, what do you see?
I see. Well, let's see. Sort of toward the background, just before, it looks like a wall with some vertical wallpaper. I'm going to guess a small room. There's a perhaps quizzical looking 3D rendering of a fella in a blue baseball cap with a white front. But in the foreground, we see a number of chess pieces, some of them tumbled. The red king and queen are standing upright, and centered pretty close to the middle, both widthwise and height-wise, is a blue pawn piece, which, considering the color tone of that fella's hat, I'm wondering if they're, you know, kind of symbolically one and the same.
Perhaps. I think I chose this still. There weren't a lot of good stills, although the whole movie is available for free on YouTube, so I could have gone on and just grabbed whatever I wanted. This kind of shows you the composition and So the thing about this movie is that it was composed in video game software for Team Fortress 2. So the software was not intended for feature film making. It was intended to let fans just goof around and make little short films using characters and game assets from Team Fortress 2, which is some sort of popular multiplayer shooter from, I don't know, early 2000s. It still has a number of fans. But this fellow Chad Payne decided to make a movie, a feature-length movie out of it, and instead of making a action movie or one of the absurd little comedies that people have been peppering and pooping all over YouTube using this software, he made a Lynchian psychological horror movie using characters from Team Fortress 2. Now, the characters are limited. The assets he can use are limited. The lighting he can use is limited. Everything is limited by the game. And yet he managed to make something watchable at about 90 minutes and confusing as hell. You don't need to know anything about the game to be confused by this movie. I've read Reddit reviews, and people who are fans of the game still don't know what's going on. There's something about some Valium type drug that may be causing people to hallucinate. There's something about respawning of military soldiers after they die that may be causing errors in characters and reality. And basically, the characters just wander from one set piece to another, usually something quite bloody and freaky. And it's just pretty amazing how a guy could sculpt a film out of such a limited palette, but he does it and he deserves credit for it. And so that's Mimesis Blue, my number 9, a movie that gets on the top 2023 list based sheerly on its oddity. Giles.
All right. Here we go. The next one. Here we go. Clicking share. And hopefully you see somewhat prominently an office advisement and a dismayed looking gentleman coming through a doorway.
That's it. John Hamm.
This is a still from Corner Office, which, hang on, buttons, don't mess with me now. Oh, they're messing with me now. All right. Corner Office, which kind of, I don't know if that ever really was in theaters much to speak of. Released in 2022, but not really made available for all intents and purposes until this past year. It does star John Hamm, who is very famous for a television show I've never seen. But I can assure you he is absolutely amazing in this film as nondescript office functionary Orson at a nondescript functioning office for business known simply as the Authority, which works exclusively with case files that are only referred to by their number. So it is never at all clear what is going on here, which kind of doesn't matter. The big issue being that this new guy, Orson, has come to work and has stumbled across this wonderful office that everyone else refuses to believe exists. And this is primarily, there's a bleak comedy thing going on in here. There's some absurdity going on in here. There's definitely a tremendous array of drab to beautiful grays going on in the image and cinematography aspects. And it's got a very sensitive, without being patronizing or demeaning, portrait of an individual on the autism spectrum that, from my personal experience, knowing a good number of them and being related to some, is probably the best depiction from, screenwriting wise, direction wise, and certainly acting wise that I have seen for these alternative thinking individuals. And so that performance really resonated with me, and it's a fun, in its odd way, is also quite a fun movie as well. So not weird per se, but good enough to crack my top 10 despite its comparative lack of outlandishness.
Yeah, that's comparative. I mean,
Yes.
you know, we got to realize you're talking to people who are going out to watch the Wonka movie sometimes. So,
Well,
well,
if that kind of person does
hey,
stumble across our website, I say welcome to them, and I hope they enjoy themselves.
it's way out of the ordinary for a normal person. Normal person. All right, stop your screen share.
I will stop. There we go. Stop.
So let me see. What was that? What number was that?
That was my number 10, 8. So 3 in.
So I'm up to my number 8, which is Infinity Pool. So
Dun-dun-dun.
we're right back. Don't have much to say in addition about Infinity Pool, except Giles was very coy about the plot. So I will respect his desire to be coy, except to say, if you watch the trailer, it really gives the basic premise away entirely. So if you
Which is fine because it's really about exploring what that premise results in. So yeah.
right, it's just that there's a technology that allows these sort of ultra wealthy people in a foreign country, and they don't even have to be ultra wealthy, just much wealthier than the natives, to sort of misbehave without direct consequences. There is a lot of hedonism and destructive behavior and very sick behavior and some masochism in there. And so that's my number 8. It was your number 9. So very close on that, I think. So Giles, are you ready for your number 7?
I think I am. And you should see, well, something not entirely clear, but this is a still, one of 5,000 possible stills, depending upon how you want to slice it, from 5,000 Space Aliens. Directed, animated, compiled, scored, hours untold, put together by Scott Bateman, whom we interviewed rather recently, I recall. And this is basically a film that is somewhere around an hour and a half-ish. That is 5,000 1-second clips of modified photographs that each are given a slight alteration or a little animation before zipping on to the next. All perfectly timed at 1 second, which I watched from start to finish without any break and was not unhappy for so doing because I don't mind, I guess I can't use the phrase overstimulated since that wasn't what happened to me, but it's the kind of thing that might happen to others who are less of a sucker for just a constant bash in the face of, color, composition. And of course, I inquired after the score that he composed, which he claimed he did being a non-musician, but I remember Greg and I slightly may have doubted that remark, but yeah, a whole lot of fun and the kind of thing that great to throw on maybe a blank wall next time you're hosting a party and just sort of have there, and it'll nicely liven up as a kind of fun time installation piece.
Yep, I agree. I think I mean, yeah, you should watch it straightforward, but it is a great, as you suggest, party piece. Let me see. So that was your number, which?
I have talked about 4 movies, so that is my number 7.
All right.
As we head toward 1.
And a long way towards 1. There's my number 7. Do you recognize it, Giles, or do you want to describe what we're seeing?
Oh, well, that looks to me like it's a black and white. It's got a kind of barren wasteland scape behind the prominent figure in the front, and that figure is skeletal, but with some circulatory and some organ and some other pieces kind of translucently appearing as well. So I'm guessing this individual or entity is in the middle of either zapping out of or into existence, at least in the visual plane.
Indeed, and it's from Divinity.
Uh-huh.
remake.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
I-
So yes, this is a black and white sci-fi movie from Eddie Alcazar. Plot involves a immortality drug called Divinity, which pretty much everyone on the planet takes. And yet there are very few females who are fertile, probably as a side effect from this drug. And a couple of aliens come down and kidnap or do a home invasion on the inventor of this drug and give him some of his own medicine. And then it starts
In quantity.
then it starts to get weird, and there's some stop motion animation at the end. Bella Thorne is in it, and
Stephen Dorff.
Dorf, and it gets very, very crazy. So yeah, it's a definitely something that's made intending to be a midnight movie, and so it does.
Oh yeah. Walkouts. Yeah, I saw a number of walkouts, even at Fantasia, even at the time slot for this thing. I guess I would say it's divisive in that there were plenty of people who thought that whatever it was doing was utterly pointless. But I liked it and do recommend it.
And someone thought it was one of the worst movies of the year on a commenter on 366 Weird Movies.
Oh my.
So we have that. Hey, let's take a break for us. You guys won't see a break, and we will be back very soon. No time at all will pass for you. Here we go. And we're back. Not that you ever noticed that we were gone, but we are back with Giles's number 6 best weird movie of 2023.
If you could allow participant screen sharing, I understand that probably got reset when we left.
I think it's on now.
Hey, here we go. And you should see a black and white image, Greg.
I see an image of a man tied up behind a glass wall. He's got sculptures in the room, and there are 2 shadowy, bald figures kind of menacing him. And he may be a bit deformed at this point.
Certainly the beefiest Stephen Dorff I've ever seen, at least at this juncture in the movie. Hang on, let me click back. So this is Divinity.
Which we've already
Which we went over, so a little more need to be said about that, other than me remarking, gosh, Greg and I kind of thought the same about this, I guess.
came in at about the same position.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much to say about that. Let me then go to my number 6, which is, well, now, Giles, you cannot possibly describe this, so just
not quickly. Crowded parking lot area, possibly certainly a carnival atmosphere, very bleached white, but still kind of color pastel thing going on. Definitely a period piece, and by golly, if that isn't a faux astronaut's helmet on the young boy in the front right-hand side of the screen. So if I say the words whimsy, pastel, and well, that should give away most of who this is and what this is.
it's also kind of a symmetrical composition.
Oh, well, that it does have very good balance. Yes.
But then, yes, of course, it's Asteroid City, and we all knew one day Wes Anderson would go full weird. Well, he didn't quite go full weird, but this is the weirdest he's ever gone in Asteroid City, which is a meta movie which starts as a TV show about a play, TV show hosted by Bryan Cranston, about a play that's being written by a Tennessee Williams-esque playwright, played by Edward Norton. And then we go inside the play he's written, which is Asteroid City itself, which is about a bunch of people converging on this two-horse desert city in somewhere in the Mojave Desert for a science fair and some other events. And then there is a alien sighting, and the military clamps everybody down and won't let anybody leave, and everybody's trapped there. And Tom Hanks has to interact with Stephen Carell and Scarlett Johansson and Jason Schwartzman and a bunch of other great actors who are all just fighting to be in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And then every now and then they go back, pull out back a layer of reality and go to the play as it's being staged. And Will Dafoe shows up and helps them make it even stranger. Yeah, it's
Yeah, Willem
everything
Dafoe was good at that.
everything you want from Wes Anderson and a lot more. It was actually my number 4 overall movie of the year. Not as weird as some of the others. So here it comes in at number, what are we on? 6, I think.
Yeah, that's your number 6, and we'll be shuffling to my number 5.
Yes, we're ready for your number 5, Giles.
All right, share screen. This one, click the button, and what do we got here?
Wow. We have 3 people holding hands, one of whom is Joaquin Phoenix, looking rather a little banged up at this point, unruly. His hair is ruffled, and he kind of looks afraid.
He does look afraid as he's holding his hands in prayer with this ostensibly very nice couple. This character he's playing in this movie is named Bo. So it is Bo who is afraid, and I actually watched that for the first time ever yesterday, and was very delighted throughout. And it was so good that it has inspired me to forgive Ari Aster for Midsommar, and I may now actually check out his first movie, Hereditary. This had all the kinds of excesses I wanted. Greg, you wrote a spot on review remarking on it kind of just sort of keeps going and is kind of self-indulgent, but that's in some ways kind of the point, and reflective of this. I have rarely had more sympathy for a protagonist, if that can be the word, since Bo is a rather passive character in his own movie, reduced effectively to just reacting to things. Among the parallels that occurred to me was Barry Lyndon is another thing where you just have this guy who, oh yeah, he just has stuff happen to him, and it is his story, and he is kind of key in that, his various reactions are, do one thing or another, but he never really takes charge of his own narrative. And that was a streak I saw in Beau is Afraid as well. So that was a great movie. All kinds of different things going on. There's a neat little theatrical animated thing that acts as a nice kind of break from the otherwise ever-mounting tension. Black comedic tension, mind you, but still very borderline overwhelming, and certainly you see Joaquin Phoenix in an unflattering but very sympathetic role for him.
Better than Napoleon for sure, although I haven't seen Napoleon, so I'm just guessing.
Certainly for our purposes, yes.
All right, that's your number 5.
That's my number 5.
So let me go to my number 5, which is going to be something that you haven't seen, I don't think, and almost no one has seen. It is This Movie Gets On Space Sheerly on Weirdness.
Okay.
Read the title. Read the title for us, John.
The Residents, Triple Trouble. And I think I can sneak in a psychedelic noir trip into the mind of a lonely ex-priest who replaces his belief in God with a faith in fungus.
And indeed, that's the truth. And this is the Blu-ray cover, and you can see a man in a tuxedo with an eyeball for a head and a top hat, and another man sort of kneeling on his lap, it looks like.
I think it's maybe like a puppet motif.
Yeah, oh, puppet motif. And the guy has the exact same T-shirt, the eyeball-headed T-shirt. This is the movie from the cult band The Residents. And so what to say about Triple Trouble? I think the title, for one thing, comes from the fact that it's their third attempt to film this story.
Oh, okay.
First one being a movie called Vileness Fats.
Oh, that's okay. It's going back that far.
A
Okay.
lot of it appears in this movie and it plays a role. Then they tried Double Trouble, which was going to tell the story of the making of Vileness Fats or something like that, and they couldn't get through it. And then they made this one during COVID era and finally got it out. And large amounts of Vileness Fat, which is just a very crazy avant-garde, completely surreal little bit of nonsense makes it into this movie. Probably most of the existing footage is incorporated in some way in here. And as I say, the story is about a priest who loses his faith and replaces his belief in God with a belief in fungus. Lots of paranoia, conspiracies, fears of kidnapping, stories of an old kidnapping, and he thinks about his father, who is a former member of the Residents. And there are little tiny video animations of the Residents in their eyeball costumes, and I think some other costumes, dancing around and playing music. Not really as much music as you would think. I don't think anybody but Residents fans are going to see this, but it is indeed, without a doubt, one of the weirdest movies of the year, one of the weirdest experiences. And therefore, despite the fact that it's almost completely incoherent, due to the fact that it's almost completely incoherent, it's my number 5 weirdest movie of 2023.
Rock and roll.
So, Giles,
I will dive right into my next.
number 4, right?
Yep, number 4. This image here is pink and violent.
Yes.
This is, I mean, if you want to.
Oh, well, it's just no, you can describe it, Giles.
Oh, okay, so it's a beautifully composed thing. It's a lilac hilltop with little plants, and there are unicorns majestically along the ridge of it, and in front of them in the foreground toward us, you can see, at least with the implication of many, many more, dozens of dead teddy bears in bright yellow war gear, and each of them sporting at least one bloody wound. So this is a still from, I think it might be a promotional still, or it might be from one of the historical segments in the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it, from Unicorn Wars, which I forced myself to remember recently when I was compiling this list, because it is a very weird movie. It concerns warring factions, primarily of teddy bear, like stuffed animal teddy bear style troops who are at seemingly a lifelong war with these unicorn entities. And there's a third group of ape-like things that have their own strange shadowy agenda, which crops up at various points. And it is, without a doubt, let me think, I want to make sure I think it's the most disturbing movie I've seen this year. It really got to me with a virulently anti-war message, heavy criticism of various flavors of organized and disorganized religion. There's some sheer grisliness, all in the context of these teddy bears and these horrible, horrible things happening to the teddy bears. There's an extended hallucination sequence that, you know, has maybe a couple minutes of, oh, isn't this nice, before descending into just sheer horrible, horrible things being seen and done to the people on this trip. And it's just a very emotionally intense 90 some odd minute cartoon.
And a lot of teddy bear wang.
There is the director is not shy about nudity in his performers of teddy bears there. Yeah.
No, I have something to say here. I
Oh,
don't know why this isn't on my top 10 list. I must have overlooked it somehow. I can't imagine that this didn't make at least my honorable mentions. I don't know what happened. I think when I was compiling my list, I somehow overlooked it because it does seem like it should be in the top 10 and it probably should be in my top 10. I'm not sure why it's not, but it's not. But it should be. So I have no problem with that choice, even though it's not on my list. I'm confounded by myself.
oh, well, it's yeah, that's okay. They heard about it. They can take their recommendation from me as I describe it. I feel my review largely reiterates what I've said just now, but also focuses on it's really good and disturbing and a cartoon. And here we
That
go.
was your number four, and this is my number four. My number four was an honorable mention from you. That's Give Me Pity. It's Sophie von Hasselberg is Sissy St. Clair. And as discussed, it's a one-woman show at the, I was going to say it's at the end, set at the end of the disco era, but the disco era was so short that it probably
Yeah, that was
in an end. But it's a one-woman show. It's a parody. And as it goes on, it descends into a nightmare, as if the LSD is kicking in slowly over the course of the movie. One of my favorite scenes is when she's reading fan mail, and how do you get fan mail on a special, but she's reading fan mail, and there's like blood starts dripping from the ceiling onto the mail she's reading. So it's stuff like that.
yeah. I liked that movie more. I liked more bits of it than as an overarching whole. Because yeah, I saw that again, catching up with this. I think that was 2 days ago now, and definitely saw a lot to like about it. But it didn't. I never really fell into it as much as I feel you did. Reading your review when you covered it first, but definitely very interesting. And the only thing I can think of that's kind of similar to it, that's at all recent, isn't out in theaters yet. So,
And I doubt that movie. I haven't seen the movie you're thinking of, but I doubt it's all that similar. I think it's just the probably the
well, the live broadcast motifs,
special life.
yeah. So that would be the if that's a genre,
Yeah.
then that's a fairly underpopulated genre.
Yeah, but this is more absurdist type, near surrealist mental breakdown in real time thing. So Giles, you ready for your next one?
Let's yeah, 1 second.
I think we're up to number three. And Giles has accidentally muted himself, I think. Ah, there we go.
That was not accidental. My phone went off and a message was being left, so
Okay,
that was proper use of mute. But I believe you see, I guess it looks kind of small. Hey, I bet I can. Hey, there we go.
there you go. Yeah, so it's a very blue composition with a uh, rock formation that is a hand. It looks like one of the digits might be almost detached and floating. Big moon in the upper right corner and a little tiny figure of probably a little girl near the center. That's a very
In
lunar landscape.
and as that is as appropriate for this movie, which is Moon Garden, which I had the pleasure of seeing this past spring, directed by Ryan Stevens Harris, and it stars his daughter, Haven Lee Harris, as a 5-year-old girl who must find her way to her parents while being pursued by an ominous entity. This, I feel, in my review, I suggested this kind of barely squeaked into weird. It's definitely got a lot of dark fantasy elements, a lot of the imagery as you've just described here, that is, dream surreal kind of thing. And I make a particular point to mention that I think it would be a great gateway weird movie for a younger audience because it is dark, but within, it's not like it's not violent to speak of, it's not traumatizing to speak of. And I'm saying this as someone who saw Monty Python's The Meaning of Life when he was 4 under the babysittership of my 2 aunts at the time. And I'm okay. And this is nothing, remotely as graphic or otherwise as that. So this is a great little dark fantasy piece that I'd actually say would pairs well with the movie Ink from I think '09, which has a sort of similar, dream thing going on there, and just a lot of great, yeah, Gilliam-esque imagery with Guillermo del Toro style lighting and some Svankmajer kind of machine things going on, and a delightfully nightmarish, unclear bad guy. So this I feel is justifiably well toward the top of my selection for weird but good dominating there.
All right.
I will stop the share.
Okay. So that was Moon Garden, your number, what was that?
3.
So my number 3 is right here. You can see it.
I can see that.
Just a photo of a old country gentleman with one of those Colonel Sanders bow ties and a seersucker suit in front of a background that's hiding the name of the movie, and the name of the movie is Adult Swim Yule Log. And there's a burning log in the background. So, as you may or may not know, this is our latest entry in the Apocrypha.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Apocryphally weird.
That's right, yeah, Christmas Day, appropriately.
Christmas Day, it was a Christmas miracle. So what happened is last year, just before Christmas, without any warning, Adult Swim announced that they would have a Yule log. Adult Swim being the people who put on Rick and Morty on the Cartoon Network, the adult programming that plays late at night and often gets weird and surreal. It's from the gentleman who did the viral short Too Many Cooks. It's his first feature-length movie, and he also did the Cheddar Goblin sequence in Mandy, the movie Mandy, the little humorous commercial insert where the goblin vomits macaroni and cheese on children.
Much to their delight.
Or so it's right. So it starts out as just one of those Yule log videos with a Yule log burning, and then a woman walks into the frame and starts vacuuming, and then there's a knock on the door and she answers the door, and some characters come in and some more characters come in, and then some serial killers come in, and then some aliens come in, and then the log comes to life and starts flying around killing people. And there's also this gentleman living inside the fireplace, and he is offering various Faustian bargains to the characters in the movie, and he is truly creepy. And
awesome.
It is one of those movies that very deftly balances sort of absurd nightmare humor with legitimate suspense and tension. There are scenes with the serial killer where guys, people are pleading for their lives, trying to talk them out of killing them, that are just top-notch suspense filmmaking. And then it will go into this little man living inside the fireplace saying that he doesn't have any Dr. Pepper, and offering his captive instead a Nurse Nutmeg. So that's Adult Swim Yule Log, and it is up for free for anybody to see on the Adult Swim channel currently. I don't know how long that will last, but it's very cheap to purchase if you buy it on VOD. Adult Swim pretty much gave it away as a Christmas gift loss leader, and yet it's one of the weirdest movies ever made. Certainly one of the 1,000 weirdest movies ever made, I'd say. Adult Swim Yule Log's my number 3, and Giles.
We shuffle ever upward two. Number two, which you mentioned earlier. This is a different screen capture from A New Old Play, which I wrote, I'm going to say, a fairly gushing review for. I have over the years developed something of a reputation, certainly with Greg, in that I will leap for the opportunity at the shortest, newest film that comes under his radar for one of us to check out. So when I made an offhand remark about thinking this might be interesting when he first mentioned it months ago, and then finding out it was 3 hours, I did feel on the hook. And my takeaway, though, was it was 3 hours, and I could have happily had it go on for at least another hour. Which is a considerable reason why I put it so highly in my good, because that is obviously meaning something, if nothing terribly specific, but very wonderful combination of stage and cinema, an epic scope to it. I personally have a fascination with the earlier part of communist Chinese history, and so I understood and was able to learn a bit more from a lot of the issues discussed in this film, including the Great Famine, which was part of the Great Leap Forward, and the Cultural Revolution and all the nastiness of that, the struggle sessions that went on as a corrective for people who were of a wayward thinking mind. So it was really spoke to my knowledge base and played with it very nicely through the lens of an artist trying to express his storytelling self over the decades through these life hazards and societal troubles. So that is very much a film I recommend.
And I would also, the only thing I'll add is there's a very reminds me sort of a Chinese Fellini, because the lead character is a clown. There's a lot of episodic stuff, and each scene is so carefully composed, and it's very nostalgic as well.
Despite yes, it's nostalgia for the good times found in the horrors of Maoist China.
Yes. Let's see what my number two is. Oh, well, we've already seen this one. This is from what Giles described as a little break or vacation in the middle of Beau is Afraid. It's animated by the guys, and this segment goes on for quite a while. Would you say it's like, I don't know, you've probably seen it more recently than me.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably about 15 minutes,
15 minutes.
Which is a bit of time, but it's also a 3 hour movie, so it's sort of like a Is this the Wolf House people?
Yes, it's animated by the people who did the Wolf House.
Oh.
In this segment, sort of Beau is watching a play put on by some refugees who are living in the forest. And as he watches it, it appears to be about him living an alternate life to the one he's leading, one in which he's more active, but ultimately I think his fate is just as sad as in reality. And so we've already discussed Beau's Afraid. Obviously, we both value it very highly. It's my number two. Giles is number, what, 5, 6, something like that?
4.
4.
No, 5. Yeah, 5. Mostly because Unicorn Wars snuck in.
Yeah, but I forgot Uniform entirely. Okay, so, wow, Giles, would we be up to your number one now?
Yeah, which I'll say is I guess sort of a surprise, because I unseen by you fine people, I kind of had to do some quick throwing together just before we recorded this, me having kind of misinterpreted just what it was I was supposed to do. So well, I wouldn't have guessed this was my number one. According to the immaculate algorithm that Greg put together, this is my number one. And so here we have it. I don't mind saying that. It is a very fine motion picture, and very unlike many things I've seen. So what do you see, Greg?
I see a swan perched on top of a staircase of an old house.
Yep. So this is a still from Leda, which is the kind of thing I didn't see many stills online for, despite the fact that the movie, 70, 80 minutes of it, any given frame is probably going to be worth, setting as your wallpaper. Not, don't mean that as a dismissive insult, but yeah, Leda was a really fascinating thing. It was not silent, but it was dialogue free, almost entirely black and white, and is I think it's early 19th century reimagining of a Greek myth. And so there's a lot of swan and egg motif imagery going on throughout this, and it is very visually compelling. And I remember the score being subtle, but noticeable and obviously pertinent, and obviously a labor of love, which I remember our interview with the director, which we had with him while he was doing his stint at a French clown college. He apparently, there are two versions of this movie. One of them is, a high res, Blu-ray release or streaming, but also for fun, he decided I'm going to make it a 3D version as well. And so learned from scratch how to do this. I haven't seen the 3D, but having watched the high-res streaming version on a rather large television, I could definitely guess at how impressive the 3D element could turn out to be. So,
Hovering egg, yeah, right in front of your face.
yeah. So Leda, according to the algorithm, is my favorite. Definitely, I have any number of good things to say about it. So I'm guessing the program is correct.
Yeah, well, I think you ranked it as number one in weirdness and
Yeah, that certainly helps, right? Yeah.
then very high on your list of overall quality. And that pushed it up because that's the way we do it. And that's Leda. And then my number one is going to be a movie that I think no one else ranked. And I think the reason no one else ranked it is because no one else saw it. And I think the reason no one else saw it is because it hasn't actually been released yet, which I didn't quite realize at the time I was making this list. It has played in 2023. It played at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It played at the IFC Center. It played at museums and some of the larger art houses in cities like Los Angeles and New York City. But first, Giles, you want to describe what you see?
Oh, certainly. This is predominantly, it's a female form, mid pose, kind of like this. There's a glorious sparkle of blue light emanating from somewhere between her heart and neck. She looks like she's mid rapture, possibly singing something, maybe. And a major addition to this woman would be a kind of tree formation growing of her, in her, around her. Certainly from her head, a wonderful group of branches have appeared, and her body, it's kind of hard to tell here, but also looks a bit barked, perhaps.
Yes. She is indeed a tree woman goddess thing, although there's no dialogue, but I mean, I think we can determine that. And she is shining out a mystical radiance to an audience of children that you can't see. The entire thing is witnessed by an audience of children. So this is Godfrey Reggio, the guy who made the Qatsi movies.
Oh,
This is his 45-minute surrealist movie. All his previous movies had been documentaries that were a bit of weird documentaries,
yeah.
but this one goes full-on surrealist. It's got UFOs, it's got dreamscapes, it's got apocalyptic imagery, it's got giant toy robots, it's got monkeys experimenting with virtual reality glasses, it's got cell phones as the monolith from 2001 and several callbacks to 2001. It's filmed on a dusty film stock. It's got a Philip Glass score, which is something Godfrey Reggio is known for and something that will attract classical music fans, certainly to this rather amazing movie. Very short. One thing, multiple people have spoiled this in their reviews. I will not say who the special guest at the end is, who comes in and speaks only in saxophone solos, but leads the audience of children to what I like to think is a happy place. It's somebody you would not think Godfrey Reggio would be pals with, but apparently they are fans, and this celebrity asked to be in this.
Nice.
Giles knows who the celebrity is, I think, though he hasn't seen the movie.
Yeah, I will say nothing though.
Okay, but you do know who it is, and you haven't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my number one. And I think when people see it, they're going to hopefully agree with me, or at least rate it very highly. And so that's it for us. But as I said, L. Rob Hubbard did submit a list, although he couldn't be with us. Several of these names are going to coincide with names we've mentioned, but let me run through them. His number 10 was Quentin Dupuy's Smoking Causes Coughing. His number 9 was Leonora Will Never Die, which was my number 10. His number 8 was Skinamarink. Did you see Skinamarink, Giles?
I did not, but I certainly respect, from everything I've heard, I certainly respect and can believe that nomination.
Skinamarink is a very divisive movie. Almost nothing happens in it. It's just spooky shots of a house and a child left alone at night, and just very subtly spooky stuff that gets under a lot of people's skin, and other people don't like it at all. His number 7 was Leda. Number 1 in my, I had it as an honorable mention. His number 6 was Divinity, which comes in at about the same place you and I ranked it. So everybody is on board with Divinity being in the top 10. No one wanted to place it in the top half of the top 10, though. But that's a lot of consensus for Divinity. His number 5 was The Cow Who Sang the Song Into the Future, which is an Argentinian magical realist movie with an ecological theme. His number 4 was A Wounded Fawn, which is one of those movies that came out at the tail end of 2022, probably just before New Year's. It's a horror movie, sort of with a schizophrenic serial killer scene from his point of view, and a lot of symbolic characters, including the fawn. His number 3 was Infinity Pool, which of course Giles and I both discussed and both placed on our list. His number 2 was Beau is Afraid, which Giles and I both placed on the list and discussed. And his number 1, and I can sort of concur with this, was Adult Swim Yule Log, even though it wasn't my number 1, because I had seen Once Within a Dream. I can understand why he would rank it.
I'm guessing that Hundreds of Beavers hasn't come out yet.
Hundreds of Beavers will be next year, yeah.
Okay, because that was going to be my guess from number 1 from him until I realized, oh wait, that's still doing its long festival circuit.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with Hundreds of Beavers, but I follow them on Facebook, so they're always posting stuff. So as soon as they have news, we'll have it. So that's our top 10 of 2023, plus a lot more. L. Rob Hubbard's vote was Adult Swim Yule Log. My vote was, what was my vote?
Once Within a Time?
Within a Time. And Giles's vote against his will was
happily against my will. How about that?
Was Leda. But if you had made your own list using a different formula than the one I used, you would have put, I think, a New Old Play.
New Old Play, yeah, when I was just sort of off the top of my head. That
So that's that. Giles, can you recommend a restaurant then?
Well, one of the best places to go is closed for the season. Although, yes, this is Jack's Hamburger Stand, which I mentioned, but they double as a Christmas tree lot.
Okay.
During winter time. So that's where we got our tree this year. So a great location.
Christmas trees are probably really cheap right now as we
yeah, it's true. And yeah. I bet they wouldn't, I bet they'd let me just take one.
Yeah.
Spare them the
All right.
trouble.
So happy New Year, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the weirdness that was 2023 and the weirdness to come. No complaints about Poor Things and A Boy and the Heron not being on the list. Please, they were not in our universe. They will be included in 2024 when hopefully we will be back. And until that, next week, I think we will have GB Hajim return. We're trying to work out a date on getting him to come back. We don't have many movies to discuss, but we'll have fun talking to him.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'll log off. Any final words, Giles?
I'll just reiterate your happy New Year and a wonderful and weird 2024 to everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.